Hello, I'm Dorene Decibus and from Begins with Ink and Paper, and welcome to Funfold Friday. I am happy that you're able to join me on this kickoff time of Labor Day weekend. The weather in the Northeast is supposed to be incredible this weekend, and so I hope you have some really fun plans ready to go for the weekend. I have a really fun fold for you tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun, and let me show it to you. I'm calling it a zigzag fold, and so you can see, just bring it up a little closer. You can see the, oops, cut it out of the screen. Sorry about that. Let's see if that's better. You can see that there's like a zigzag right here, and that's how that's why I'm calling it a zigzag fold. I saw this fold on a demonstrator's website, Beth McClellan, and so I decided to try it. I am using the gorgeously made cling stamp set and dies, so I'm using the whole bundle, and it has these gorgeous dies that you can use with any stamp set, any card that you're using. This die here is great. It gives the torn paper effect, so it's kind of cool for those of you that don't like to tear your paper. It gives you that torn paper. This gives you the top of or the side of a notebook, a spiral notebook, torn page. And then you have these great stamps, and I'm going to be using 3 of them tonight, so that's why they're missing from the box. So our fun fold, when you open it, looks like this. So let's start with what it looks like standing up. So it has all of these layers, all these fun layers, and this is what it looks like when you're opening it from the front here. So this card, this design is great if you want to show off a lot of designer series paper, and there is certainly some great designer series paper out. I just wait to see what's coming up next week from Stamping Up in designer series paper. It is pretty impressive. So the colors I'm using for cardstock, I'm using fresh fuchsia, and I'm using the Masterfully made designer series paper, which has fresh fuchsia and berry burst in it. I'll show you the pieces in a little more detail. So for this one, I decided to add a die cut to it. So I did take some white, basic white paper, and I cut this die from it. I've already cut from this piece of basic white, I die cut the top edge to show you. Let me just show you that torn paper look. This measures 2 1/4 by 3 3/4. I have another piece of basic white cardstock that measures 2 1/2 by 4 inches. This is going to go in the very inside of the card. I have another piece of fresh freesia that measures 2 1/2 by 4 inches. Excuse me. And I have 3 different designs from the designer series paper that I'm using. So they are double-sided. So if I start with the back side of these papers, you can see that this one just has some pretty floral images. To give you an idea on that, looks like I may have a, there we go. So we've got some pretty floral images on that, and let me just click one. Yeah, I got that done. And these, both of these look like they're torn paper, like there's bits of torn paper that have been put on a piece of paper and then photographed and made into a paper. And the same with this one. It looks like it has a little bit of designer paper here that has been torn. Some have been embossed, so just kind of a cool berry burst look to it. And this one has the berry burst as well, and then it looks like it has some of this designer series paper that's been torn here, some of the yellow, some of the fresh Freesia, and then there is some printing in gray, but it's kind of distressed so that you can't read every word or see every letter, so it's kind of cool. So that's the designer series paper I'm using. So the 3 sizes of paper that I'm using tonight are 4 1/4, 3 by 4 1/4. Our second piece is 3 1/2 by 4 3/4, and our last piece is 4 by 5 1/4, just like on a regular card. So these pieces will be used on these 3 pieces of cardstock. And so to make the card, we are going to have 3 squares of cardstock. This first one is a square of 5 1/2 by 5 1/2. The second smallest piece is 5 inches by 5 inches, and then this final piece is 4 1/2 by 4 1/2. You do not need to remember those. I will put it in the comments at the end of the video. So let's get started. I'm going to use my paper cutter to score tonight, and I'll show you why, because our first score is pretty small. So it doesn't matter what side you score on, because it's a perfect square, but the scoring is going to be the same for all of them. So the first score mark is going to be at 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to score that a couple times, and then I'm going to score at 1 1/4 inches. So again, as I said, it's going to be the same on every single card. And let me put that aside. Then I'm going to take this piece as well, and I'm going to score again at 1/4 inch. So you don't go in very far for 1/4 inch. And the one thing you want to make sure is that you're using the scoring blade, not the cutting blade that's way up here. Then I'm going to go into 1 1/4 inches on my second largest piece. And then on my third largest piece, the 5 1/2 inch square, again, same scoring marks. It's going to be 1/4 inch and then 1 1/4 inch. So let me put that into 1 1/4 inch. So all my scoring is done, and I can put that away. Let me just grab, I'm going to be using tearing tape on this. Of course, I need to find my tearing tape. My husband and I were in Boston all day, and we actually left Boston today at 1 o'clock. It takes 2 hours to go from Boston to our house, so not terribly long. And this afternoon, with all of the Labor Day traffic, it ended up taking, we didn't get home until 4:30, so it took 3 1/2 hours to get home. There were many times that we were just literally sitting on the highway. So I wanted to bring out that there is one thing we need to do. On each of these, to get that zigzag, we need to do a cut. So I'm going to go in 1/2 inch, and I'm going to take my scoring blade and just cut in to give me a mark. And I'll show you what we're going to do. It's an easy cut to do. So for each of these, I'm going in 1/2 inch, and I am going to just make that mark so that I can do the cutting that I need to do. And I think this is the easiest way to do it. You could measure with a ruler, use a pencil, but since we've already scored, it's so simple to do this way. So what I'm going to do is to take my paper snips, and I am going to just finish cutting in to that score line, and then my other score lines right here, I am going to cut at a diagonal right up to that point. So that is what it's going to look like when it is done. So I'm going to do this 3 times. I'm going to finish cutting in to that score line, the 1/4 inch score line, and then I'm going to trim right up to the top score line again. So this is how I'm getting that little zigzag. I showed you in the card. I'll show you that again. So this zigzag that is right along here, so that these all lay on top of each other nicely and show the designer series paper. So that's where that is coming from. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to, before I use my bone folder, I am going to be folding first at the 1 1/4 inch mark, and then I am going to fold outward that 1/4 inch. So the first fold goes on the 1 1/4 inch, the second fold goes on to that little tab. So I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to fold in, and then I am going to fold out. And like in any fun fold that we do, it is really, really important to have the crease. So that's, you want to have a really nice crease anytime you do a fun fold. This card will fit in a regular envelope, so that's not an issue. So there we go. We've got our edges. I like to come in and just make sure the edges of my cardstock are smooth, because sometimes things get turned inside out, and sometimes there's a little bit of a ridge on the outside where something has been cut. Okay, so now what I can do is start putting in my designer series paper. So it's going to go in just like it's a 1/4 inch smaller than your piece of cardstock. So you want to just put that in like you normally would put in your designer series paper. So I'm going to add some adhesive, and the first piece is just going to be centered. There we go. Then I'm going to go to the next largest, and I'm going to be putting this piece in. So again, I'm going to add my adhesive with the Stampin' seal, and that's going to go right inside. Just center it before you put it down. And then finally, the smallest piece of designer series paper is going to go on the inside as well. There we go. So now what I need to get is my, let me just grab my tear and tape, and I am going to be putting a piece of tear and tape right on that 1/4 inch. Now, here's a little trick about tear and tape that you may or may not know, but if you burnish it down with your bone folder, makes it so much easier to pull off. So there we go with that one. Now I'm going to go to my next size of my fold. I like just opening the whole thing back up to put it down. Then I can get right into the crease. There we go. Let me just cut it a little short. And then again, I'm going to burnish it. Piece doesn't really want to stay. And now we'll go to the smaller piece and do the same thing. Oh, I did the smaller piece. We'll go to our larger piece. Sorry about that. And get this down on that 1/4 inch crease. This card looks a little complicated to make, but it is pretty easy when all is said and done. It's not as hard as it might look at first glance. So I'm going to burnish that. And now we're going to get our cardstock, get the card all put together. So I'm going to start with this first panel that I had of the fresh Freesia. Take off my tearing tape, and I am going to close this over so the tearing tape is on the front. And then I am going to match up the bottom corner and the sides and press this down. So I want that piece down. Making sure that everything is lined up where I want it to be before I start pressing it down. Okay, there's our first piece. Now we're going to go to our second piece. There we go. And this entire piece is we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to line everything up with the edge of the card and attach that. So now we have our 3 bases, and let's go to our very last one. So let's get that. You can see how easy it comes off the tear and tape when you do that burnishing. It makes it really quick and easy. So I'm going to line these up again. And now we have our card all put together. So now we are ready to do our stamping. All right, so we're just going to use Berry Burst ink today. I'm going to start on the inside layer. And on the inside layer, all I did was stamp You're a Great Friend, and then part of the greenery in the Berry Burst. So as I've said many times before, I always ink up my stamp. If I've got a lot of ink around the edges, I just wipe that clean. And I always stamp to make sure that it is straight. So it is. Just going to be careful of all that ink I just got on my finger so I don't get ink everywhere. And I am going to stamp this towards the top, just like that. And then I am going to take just part of my stems, and I'm going to have this, just one piece of it, come in at the bottom. So that's all we're doing for the inside panel. So pretty, so cute. Okay, now for the front panel. We are going to be inking up the entire stemmed image. And I am going to be stamping that on my front of the card. There we go. And I am going to take, this comes from the Lovely Leaves stamp set. I have some, a splatter image, and I have my hello from this. And I'm going to stamp my hello right there at the bottom of my page. And I'm going to take this stamped, the splatters, and I'm going to just stamp it at a diagonal. So I'm going to go on and off, on and off. So I get some dimensions, some different coloring of the splatter dots. So that looks great. And now we're in the final stretch of putting our card together, because this was the more, not, I don't want to say challenging, but the longer, more detailed part of making the card. The stamping was fairly easy. So I'm going to start by just adding some Stampin' Seal to the back of this, and I'm going to layer this right onto the card front so it's even. There we go. So that's done. And then this piece is going to go on the inside of the card. So again, we'll just add some Stampin' Seal, and we're going to put this right in the center on the inside. I mentioned before that we had this little piece. I'm going to put this right on the inside of this because it will cover, the other layers will cover it up. So I am going to use some of my Tomboy Mono liquid glue, and I'm just going to put, oops, I just squeezed out a whole bunch. That's not what I want it to do. So I'm just going to take a scrap of cardstock, and I'm just going to pick from that and put it where I want. Has this ever happened to you when you squeeze the glue and you're not really paying attention to how hard you're squeezing, and just a whole mess of glue comes out? Go down the stem a little bit and get some over here. Okay, so I've got most of that off now. And so I'm going to just place this sort of at a diagonal. Push that down. So that's what it looks like on the inside of the card. There we go. Just the white just adds a nice darkness to the berry burst. And now we're going to do some additional decorating. I'm going to also go back and just do a little bit more burnishing to start getting this card to sit a little flatter. You can see in my original one it's sitting a little flatter, but it's had I made it last week and designed it last week. So the first thing I'm going to use for some decorations, these are the Tinsel Gems 4-pack. So this is what it looks like. For colors, it has peacock, blueberry, berry burst, and lemon lime. So it has these just fun gems. And I am going to use some of these gems on the front of the card. So I'm just going to start with a big one on the top and then two of the smaller ones. These are self-adhesive, and I just want to remind you, I usually set them up in the shape of a triangle just to have it meet the eye a little easier. And then the final thing is I'm going to take some of the white baker's twine, and I am going to make a double bow. I make my bows while it's still attached to the ribbon roll so that I don't waste a lot of ribbon as I'm making them, and then I can pull out the ends and make it a smaller bow. I'm going to do the same over here on this side. I really try to be frugal with my ribbon and my, it just, I hate it when I run out of it. So I make my bows. When I do something with customers, I give them a lot more ribbon because I don't want them to be having a really hard time making their bows. I figure I can have a little bit more of a hard time. Okay, now let's just pull that out a little bit. I want this to be a pretty small bow. So that's what I'm going for here. Okay, there we go. And now I can just take my paper snips and cut off the edges. And I am going to grab a glue dot. And I am going to put this right on the stem down here. And I wanted that smaller bow because it's right at the bottom of the card. And I didn't want to have the edges, the tails too long. So there we go. That is our fun fold for Labor Day weekend 2023. What do you think? Here is how it came out. So when we open it up, we have lots of places to write because you have the back sides of all of these fresh freesia sides, and you have a chance to show off some great designer series paper. You have a chance to show off some beautiful die cuts. I know I have these from, I'm trying to think what did I cut these from last week? I had some left over. But you could even use, you would need a smaller one to be able to cover. So if you wanted to put more die cuts in, you could. But this is our Fun Fold Friday for this week. Now, for next week, I am not going to have Fun Friday. I am going to a demonstrator event and need to leave Friday afternoon so that we will get down there and be ready for Saturday morning. So there will not be a Fun Fold Friday next Friday. This weekend, I am going to take some time off for Labor Day. So on Sunday, there will not be Simply Stamping Sunday, but the following Sunday, there will be Simply Stamping Sunday. So be ready for that. I hope you all have a glorious Labor Day weekend. Enjoy having a long weekend. I know I will, especially after the first week of school. And I will see you not until next Sunday, which will be September 10th at 7 o'clock for Simply Stamping Sunday. And then I will be back on the 15th for Fun Fold Friday. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.